Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, my name is Pethani, and you're listening to The New Warehouse. The safety tip for this week is if you are in Midwest or in the places where you have a lot of heat, make sure that your corrugated boxes have enough climate control set up in your warehouse, or else they can absorb a lot of humidity, and that can become a stack of falling cards if you're stacking upstairs. So make sure you have good climate control in a warehouse where you have a lot of corrugated boxes.
Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I am joined by Parth Pethani. He is the Warehouse Robotics Practice Leader at Bricz. And Parth is going to talk to us about what it is that Bricz does. And he's going to tell us what his title means, too. I've never seen a title like that, so it's pretty interesting. And he's also going to talk to us specifically about robotic implementation and how a company can go from no-bot to robot. So Parth, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me. I really like the zing to that no-bot to robot.
Oh, you like that? I thought of that one late night. You know,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So welcome to the show. So, and gave us a really interesting safety tip there in the beginning. So I like that. But why don't you tell us a little bit about Bricz? What is Bricz?
Sure. So Bricz is basically a supply chain strategy and solution consulting company out of Atlanta. So we have offices in India, Atlanta, and in UK. So the goal that we started this company was basically helping the CIOs and CSOs, so supply chain officers, chief supply chain officers, with the strategy, devising the strategies, implementing the strategies, implementing the technologies that comes along with the strategies. So we have those two verticals, if you will, that we work out of. One vertical is a strategy, and second one is a technology consulting. When it comes to technology, we implement any systems within the supply chain, so be it TMS, and WMS, voice, robotic systems, and everything. So that's what Bricz is about. We are, of course, partners with the big players in this field. We are a small but growing company, and we recently started our UK office as well.
Okay, all right, interesting. So, and you guys play in the robotic space, as I imagine, as well, right? So you at Bricz, your title is Warehouse Robotics Practice Leader. I've never seen a title like that. So obviously, I'm guessing you deal with warehouse and you deal with robots in the warehouse. So tell me a little bit about the title. What does that mean? What do you do exactly?
So that's definitely one of the brainchild that I've been working with for Bricz for the last couple of years now. Yeah. So I think the initial idea of the robotics practice came up when it was like a parallel work streams that were working. One was we were seeing a lot of unemployment back in 2016, 17, 18, unemployment being very less, people were getting a lot of gig economy. So retailers were finding hard to find finding hard to find warehouse employees. Then we also realized that a lot of our customers were coming to us saying that, you know what, I need some kind of robotic solution. Can you come and tell us what to do? We don't have no idea. We have this DC. We don't know where are the opportunities, or if there is an opportunity for us to do some kind of robots, implement or some kind of robot. So both thinking about the need and thinking about where the market was going, we realized that there is actually a need for someone like us who basically in simple layman's term can be a realtor because you are doing a lot of investment. We will come and help you make sure you have the right people, right vendors, right robot solution fit, that you can implement for your long-term goals. And that's where this idea of warehouse robotics practice in a consulting world came out of it. And that's what I've been leading at Bricz recently. And part of the overall idea of this whole practice is to just make sure that we are helping the retailers, 3PL, distribution companies adopt robots in the warehouse, right? We want to change the whole idea about them being a replacer versus them being the enabler. So that's what we are working towards. We want to make sure that you have the right skill sets, right partners to execute that robotics project or robotics in your warehouse.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So it sounds like you've kind of been, staying in front of the technology and helping your customers be able to get into the technology as well. So, you mentioned there that you guys, you've been a company already, and then your customers kind of were the ones creating this demand from you for robots, right? So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the zinger you like there? Like how can a company go from no bot to robot? Like how? So I guess maybe why don't you tell us about maybe that initial customer you had that was having the issue that you mentioned with trying to get warehouse employees and needed a robot solution. How did you kind of take them through the steps to get robots into their facility?
Sure. Yeah. So I think I really like that question, and I think the way I would think about this, or if I have to back 2 years back when we initially got those kind of requests, was for any end, it implies to any customer or any retailer, 3PLs, that first, when you think about going from no bot to robot, there are a few things that you have to understand, right? The first thing is you have to understand your goal or intention behind going that robotics project. So is it because there is a pain point that you see that you're not able to retain your workforce warehouse employees, or you're looking for something where you need to increase your UPS, units per hour picked, or you are seeing a exponential growth in a specific area where you cannot meet using your current warehousing needs that you have. So once you identify that intention, that's when you start understanding what's the approach is going to be. So we basically come in, or we help understand that intention first, and then we dig into the opportunities, right? This is where we go, is it a multi-site implementation or multi-site that you are thinking for your strategy, or is it just one site that, let's say in Washington, D.C., I need better picking rates, or it's going to be all the nodes, I'm seeing a lot of issues, so I need to figure out what could be my overall automation strategy for all the nodes in the network, whereas just one node in the network. So you decide that would be a second point to think about, and then the third will be the opportunities, right? And that's when I think really we, with the understanding of the business, understanding the fulfillment can help, is we come in, take the data, right? This is a data heavy approach. We sit with you, we do the time-based studies, we actually see that how much time you're spending, how much cost you're spending, what is your burden labor cost, do all those calculations and come up with good charts, good data to tell you that, okay, there is an opportunity for you to maybe think about reducing your unwanted travel times, or there is an opportunity for you to implement, let's say, palletizers or depalletizers, because that's a manual work. Your laborers get really tired because your warehouse forces get really tired because of that. So it's better that you implement a palletizer, something like that. So we come up with those opportunities. We then map it against your future plans. And that goes back to the original point that, is it a multi-site rollout? Is it a single-site rollout? versus also is it because of labor workforce issue, or is it because of increasing UPH? So we map those three things against each other and then come up with a prioritized list. Okay, this at site 1, I need reduced travel time. Site 2, you know what, I need to just implement ASRS because that's how I'll get a better UPH that I'm looking for.
Okay.
So you come up with a prioritized list, and within a year, usually you can go to 1 or 2 priority because of the impact or because of how workforce intensive this project could be. You go with the priorities. We represent the priorities to the stakeholders on your end, and then basically based on the priorities, we start executing. And this is where we highly recommend is to go proof of concept based. Start small. You always want to start small because that's the early wins can help you build a momentum for a bigger rollout. So start small. Start with one site AMR implementation. Start with one site ASRS. Get the data. Get what your KPIs are met. Once your KPIs are met, that's when you start rolling out to different nodes in your fulfillment network. And another thing to remember is that once you're doing the POC, which is a proof of concept, or you're starting small, you'll realize that there are some improvements that you need to do. There are some best practices that you can leverage from your current implementation to the next implementation. And that's how you basically go from a no-bot to a robot, right? Because you started with a small one, you learn your things, you learn your best practices, lesson learned. You now know what things to look out when you implement AMRs, what things to look out when you implement ASRS. And now you can leverage that understanding, that lesson learned from one side to other side and just keep building up on that. And I think one important thing I always recommend my clients is to highlight their success with your first site, second site, third site, because sharing the success helps them build that acceptance across their company that, yes, robots are helping us improve our warehouse workforce conditions. They are helping us improve our UPH, units per hour. It's also helping us improve our safety. So overall, it's a win-win situation for everyone if we implement robotic solution, if we find the right robot solution fit.
Yeah, very interesting. And I liked how you took us through the entire process there. It's really good to know. You mentioned something interesting in there where you said, maybe you bring in the robots, but then you realize you have to make some further improvements as well to make sure it's successful. So that kind of, I guess, goes in line with our next question is, how do you plan? So I think kind of what you went through there is kind of the identification of what solution is really needed, right? But then we get to the selection process. We select, what robot we want to put in place, whether it's AMR or ASRS, like you mentioned. But how do you plan for a successful implementation? And I think that there's probably some of that improvement that probably needs to happen before you actually put in place the robots, I would imagine. So talk to us a little bit about that, and how can a company and organization like really make sure that they have a successful implementation.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Actually, a great question. So I think for a great implementation, I personally feel that there are three main components. The first component being your robot, actual robot that is supposed to do the work. Second is your team that is actually executing it. The third is the seamless integration between the robot and the whatever system is telling the what to do to robot, right? So I think those three factors are really important for a successful implementation. So I think from a overall project perspective, I believe that the very first thing is to find the right robot solution fit. And that's where I think you, as someone, if you're a 3PL, if you're a retailer, you want to really dig down in this approach. Use as much data as you can, do as much data crunching as you can, and find the right solution that can help you solve the problem and also actually scale with your business needs, right? You don't want someone who can just fix today's problem. You want someone who can support you in your overall journey of e-commerce or overall journey of shipping directly to the customer. So finding the right robot solution fit is really important. But that's where you do your business requirements gathering, your current opportunities, your current plans, your pain points, your intention behind going robotics. So once you identify the right robot solution fit, you go to the next step, which is your implementation planning. This is where you go and basically plan your systems. And again, as I said, start small. So we start with one side. We understand what are our stakeholders, what's the timelines, what are the KPIs. And this is the most important thing I recommend to judge any success, is to understand the KPIs. And fortunately for us, and overall for the industry, because of the way we have these standardized KPIs, the Warehouse Education Research Council has done a great job of putting up some KPIs that our warehouse leaders can follow. So we can just track those KPIs before the robots and after the robots and understand that what has improved, what has not improved, why we are not seeing the improvements. So that's when you do the iteration on it, right? Let's say, for example, you had an AMR and you realize that with 10 AMRs, before implementation, you were thinking that my UPH, units per hour, will increase 3 times, right? I'm at 60 right now. I want to reach at 210, let's say, or 4 times actually. I want to reach 210. And during that process, and that timeline is 6 months. And if you're not seeing that in 6 months, maybe you need to consider adding more robots, or maybe you just realize that your DC gets so much congested because of more number of robots, you can realistically may not be able to reach 210 UPH in one working site. You might have to divide it between 2 different shifts and maybe do it, or 2 different sites and do it. So those are the things that you realize once you actually implement something. And that's what I always say, start small, because we can always, and honestly, personally for me, and I can speak for many other, we always want to start big, right? We want to see the big bang effect. Right. And that's what's not going to help when we are working in warehouse robotics. We want to start small, be nimble, be agile, and actually see the results for the implementation. And then once we have that results, we can always go to the next steps. So we can always scale it up from there. And to your question about the implementation, like the integration is something I always feel, it's my personal opinion, is that they always feel that it's being overlooked. I think we tend to forget that that robots are basically a piece of junk if they don't get the right information, right? So it's really important to have a right whoever is sending that in directions to the robots, either if it's a WCS, WES, WMS, you need to have the right integration to capture all your business cases, all your use cases, all your edge cases, and exception handling to actually get that robot working for you, instead you working for a robot and making sure the robot works for you, right? So I think that's the most overlooked part that I see that, and I always, whenever I'm on a project, whenever we are in that implemented life cycle, I always make sure that we have a robust solution design, which covers all these use cases that I mentioned. And so at the end, when we are in production, we don't have to worry about, oh, I forgot to test this. Oh, I cannot know because it's a hazmat label. I'm sorry, I cannot. My robot will fail now. The whole system goes haywire. So integration is something that I always recommend should not be overlooked, because or else it's a junk of piece that is sitting in your warehouse.
Right. Yeah, a lot of interesting points there. And I think, it sounds like from your perspective, and I agree, the initial data analysis and making sure that you have the right information, not only put together and understood, but the right information being communicated and flowing through the process to whatever the solution may be, is really the key too, as well as that communication portion, which is funny because communication is often the key between humans being successful as well. So you want to make sure your robot's getting the right communication as well. So that's a really good insight. And I'm curious, as you talked about, it sounds like your approach with Bricz is like you guys go in and you kind of look at the overall operation and see really where is the opportunity that the customer can win essentially from implementing a robotic solution. But how many times do you find where a customer is saying maybe like, oh, I need a robotic solution here in this process in my operation, and you guys go in and you take a look at it and you're kind of like, no, that's not really where the opportunity is. There's actually the opportunity is here.
So I have seen a flavor of what the instance that you mentioned. So we have seen where clients basically had come to us and they're like, you know what, I know I need a palletizing solution because these bags are super heavy. It's a 50-pound bag, food items, right? They're like a bag of rice. Yeah. They are 50-pound bags, and my warehouse employee is picking up and putting on a pallet. It's actually a lot of physical toll, which I know I don't want my warehouse workers to go through it. So just help me find a solution that can do that, right? Yeah. So that's just straight away, we know that it's a solution that it becomes easy for us at that point, just saying, because we know that we need to work the industry and find out the right palletizers, the right point of entry, how much the pallets are building versus what is the cost of making that pallet, the robots, and all those nitty-gritty that we have to figure out with the vendor, and we can do that. That's okay. But then there's another flavor where, as I said, customers come to us and they're like, just tell me if I need a robot or not, or just I want a robot, just tell me where to put it, right? And at that point, I have seen cases where we went back to a customer saying that your intention is really good. You are thinking about your warehouse employees. You want more UPH, but the numbers don't tell us that you should go with robots right now. You don't have enough volume. Your cost of entry is going to be high. We do not see an ROI in near future where we will be able to tell you that this investment is justified. So we have went back to our clients saying that, you know what, I'm sorry, I think you don't have the numbers. Your volumes are not enough where we can actually recommend someone to you. But we can always say that, maybe in 5 years now, if you think you're sending 1,000 SKUs per day or 1,000 orders per day, maybe you can consider this A solution, B solution, C solution. So we have also approached that way to our clients.
Yeah, very interesting. I was curious about that because I'm sure that happens often where I guess the customer is thinking they need one thing, but then when you actually dig really into it and look at all the data, like you said, it's actually something else that could give them more benefit, and maybe the thing that they're interested in is not really beneficial at all. It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Correct. And one thing we have to note here is that depending on the size of the customer, so for example, if it's a big 3PL company, or let's say Radial or a Ryder, right? They're a big 3PL. They have the internal consulting groups who does all this number crunching. So they have a very good idea on what and where they need to implement a robotic solution. But there are other companies where they do not have just the human power, right? Their business is not solving the warehouse problem. Their business is to meet the orders for the customer, right? So that's what their bread and butter is, right? So in those places, I think it's really helpful for have someone like us where we'll be doing right by our clients. Doesn't matter if the robot solution, we are not getting paid by robotic integrators like someone else to sell a solution. So we are going to be doing right by them. And that's why we always see this contrast where we have companies where they have human resource skills and human power to come up with these use cases where they can implement robots. But then there are companies where they don't have an iota of experience and they're like, we need help. Just tell us what to do.
Yeah, very interesting. And I really think it's an interesting discussion because I think robots are probably like just in the past couple of years have become so real in a sense. I think you think like maybe like 10 years ago and you say like, oh, we're going to have robots in the warehouse and stuff like that. Is a lot of people are kind of like, oh, no, no.
That's true.
Yeah, where the robots are going to, take jobs away and this and that. But it's become very normal now. And I think especially with the pandemic too, I talked to a couple of different robotics companies on the podcast, and they're like, well, yeah, people are needing these, and like demand is going up because e-commerce is going up, and people don't want to work, and it's safer, and all these things. And now all of a sudden, like robots are such a reality. So it's a really interesting discussion to have on the implementation, because I think so many people probably in the next couple of years are going to be probably going through these implementations for the first time, because I think it's starting to become to a point where it's like it's more accessible to like the smaller companies too as well, and those medium-sized businesses. Yeah, it's no longer just like for the Amazons, right, of the world.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. Yeah. I think we should give some credits to these robot solution providers as well to make it affordable, because they came out with this robots as a service model, right? So that makes it really accessible for clients who doesn't have that much capital to spend right out of the pocket. Yeah. So I think it's good to see that the industry is coming together to make the robots accessible for a lot of the people.
Yeah, definitely. Very, very good point there as well. Yeah. The robots as a service, I think, is an incredible thing. And I think it's gonna help the growth of the industry utilizing robots too as well.
Definitely,
yeah. So along those lines, we talk about the next couple years and the robotic landscape and the warehousing landscape. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the conversation between like a dark warehouse versus just a collaborative robotic warehouse? Do you think that the dark warehouse will eventually prevail, or do you think we'll always have some kind of collaborative human element going on?
Actually, it's a great question. I think it's a lot to unpack there. So I think the way. So, in my understanding, right? So, dark stores equals to micro fulfillment centers equals to urban fulfillment centers. So, anything that that is close to suburbs or close to cities that can fulfill your demand faster, right? So, that's what my understanding of dark stores is, right? And the collaborative robots is something that is working next to a human being, right? So, my take on this overall concept is, I think they both will go hand in hand because. There are players like Amazon, there are players like Walmart, there are grocers like Kroger, HEB, and who have this dark stores or micro fulfillment center that they can set up and do the faster customer order, right? If 2020 was any indication, right, it was clear that people are ready to not to go to grocery and just do the pick up the grocery, right? So I personally think that I'm not going back to a grocery store. I'm just going to do an order online. So I think and that's the part where I think dark stores or micro fulfillment center can really play a great role. Like solution providers like auto stores, they can really play a good solution here, because they can actually help us save a lot of time, which we used to spend in groceries, right? I don't want to walk 10, 50, one mile to just shop my thing, right? Yeah. And at the same time, it's a customer convenience versus also the cost of fulfilling the order that grocers are spending, right? So that's why I'm thinking the dark stores, the micro fulfillment centers does make sense for grocers, high volume retailers like Walmart, Amazon, right? But then it comes to 3PL, the middle mile, who are fulfilling the orders. I think that's where the collaborative robots will play a good role, because the best thing about collaborative robot is that they can reconfigure, the user training is very fast. So for people like 3PLs, they usually have a lot of different clients. Every 5 years, they might have a new client. They have different SKUs that they don't know. So I think at that point, the collaborative robots can play a really good role to make sure your orders are picked and packed faster. And at the end, it's the goal, right? To ship your orders, to have the orders as fast as we can. And to pick one between the other, it's not going to be a right choice, because it depends on how much volumes you are fulfilling. So it's going to be parallel. Depending on who you are, you might go with a collaborative robot versus not going with a collaborative robot, going with a dark store versus not going with a dark store. But they both will survive. And honestly, if you think about the recent news about locusts, it's clear that they both will survive.
Oh yeah, I was just seeing that. I think like yesterday, I started posting all about it on LinkedIn. Yeah, billion dollars, pretty pretty crazy. Yeah,
and they started with a small use case to reduce the unwanted travel time, and now they're at a $1 billion valuation. So they're collaborative robots are going to stay.
Okay, all right. So you got your vote in there. Yeah, but I totally agree with you. I think that it depends on like the application. Like I don't think I mean, even talking about the earlier little chat we had about the mindset around robotics. Like 10 years ago or whatever. It was really like, oh, when is when are we not going to need people in the warehouse? But I think you're right that it's going to depend on the application, and like you said, the closer like micro fulfillment centers and like that, it makes sense to make it a dark warehouse, or even change some retail stores into like a dark warehouse essentially. And but yeah, I think for the bigger fulfillment and the more widespread larger centers, I mean the collaborative I think is definitely the way to go. But we will see what happens and what unfolds. So yeah.
I'm just excited for it. I think it's going to be a great. I think we are going through a disruption, honestly, in the warehouse space. I think we have been in the same stagnant area for a while. We were having human power doing all the heavy work, all the lifting. Like when going back to my origin, one of the instance that I mentioned that when I heard that one of my clients said that they are actually lifting 50-pound bags. I was like, that's a lot of work in this 21st century. God, I cannot see myself picking up that, so I don't want to see anyone else picking up that bag.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because even I had work as a warehouse manager as well, and I had some people come from like furniture companies and stuff, and they're like, and I'm like, oh, like how do you guys pick those and stuff like that? And they're like, oh, it's heavy work. Like we were up on the order selector, and we're moving couches out of the rack, and I'm like, oh my god, like that's we shouldn't be doing that. It's like risky. Yeah, so that's killing everybody's back.
Yeah, my days actually.
Yeah, definitely. So really interesting discussion on implementation and kind of the future thinking as well on robots and how that's all going to go. So Parth, I want to thank you for coming on the show today and talking to me and giving me some insights on how to have a successful implementation and go from no-bot to robot, as we were saying, right?
That's very cool.
Yeah. So how can people... go ahead.
I think you should patent that.
Oh, yeah, Sebastian. Well, if Bricz wants it, I sell it to you.
That's pretty cool.
So speaking of Bricz, how can people find out more information about Bricz?
Yes. So thank you, Kevin, for having me and having me represent Bricz. So Bricz.com, BRICZ.com is where you find all the information. It's up to date with all our white papers, blog posts, case studies, and our clients as well, our services as well. So that's going to be one source of truth that I always recommend our prospective clients to go and check it out.
Okay, great. And we'll put all those links on the newwarehouse.com as well. So, Parth, thank you again for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate for having me. Thank you for your time.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.